Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. Today we'll be discussing the only Japanese American member of the Mexican Mafia, Mike KUDO, beginning with his origins in Hawaii, early criminal history in Honolulu, his migration to California, his commitment offense, recruitment into the Mariposa, his padrino, parole, and eventual demise. But before we begin, a quick word from our sponsor. You have heard that it was said to those of old, "You shall not murder," and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without cause shall be in danger of the judgment. Michael Ichiro Kudo was born on July 9, 1940 in Honolulu, Hawaii, to parents Isami Kudo and Violet Kinoshita. Kudo attended McKinley High School in Honolulu. The picture you are viewing is from the 1956 yearbook from his sophomore year. The next picture appears to be a senior yearbook picture from 1958. These innocent times would not last long, and shortly thereafter, Kudo's wild and rebellious side would lead to his first encounters with law enforcement and the courts. On February the 14th, 1960, at 3:30 a.m., Pearl City police officers formed a perimeter around 36 youth enjoying illegal drag racing on Iroquois Road on Navy property. Previous attempts at apprehending the youths had failed due to the use of lookouts posted 3/4 of a mile away from the actual drag racing, but police blocked off previously used escape routes to the cane fields. Youths ranging in age from 16 to 21 were charged with trespassing and released on $25 bail. 19-year-old Michael Kudo was one of the youths taken down in the dragnet. Kudo's affinity for motorsports is no surprise when we look at his father's past. In February of 1926, Isami Kudo was admitted into the Wahoo Motorcycle Club and took part in the sectional hill climbing contest at Woodlawn Hill in East Manoa on February the 21st. Kudo's next run-in with the law took place on June the 23rd, 1960, when police received a tip at 1:15 a.m. that the Country Square store was being burglarized. Lieutenant Thomas W. Soper, a sergeant, and 4 police officers arrived and found Kudo and a 16-year-old juvenile breaking into a pinball machine while Robert Nishihama sat in the car as a lookout. Police found the front door and 2 other pinball machines broken open. Kudo and Nishihama were booked on charges of first-degree burglary. The juvenile was charged with juvenile delinquency. Kudo and Nishihama were indicted by the Oahu grand jury on August the 18th, 1960. Kudo's criminality continued to escalate. He was arrested on July the 5th, 1963 for rape. The Oahu grand jury indicted Kudo on July 11th, 1963 for the rape of a 26-year-old Honolulu waitress on July the 2nd, 1963 in Kahala Beach Park. Kudo was arraigned on July the 19th, 1963 and entered a not guilty plea and was released on $4,500 bail. On January the 8th, 1964, Circuit Judge William Z. Fairbanks forfeited the bond and issued a warrant for Kudo's arrest when he failed to appear for trial. Kudo's lawyer told court that he had been able to reach his client and it was believed that he had fled from the jurisdiction. It is quite possible that his father's ailing health and hospitalization due to a heart condition spurred Kudo's decision to jump bail for Gardena, California, where his father passed away on January the 10th, 1964. On June 20th, 1964, a party was held at the Gardena home of Kudo's sister. Frank Suzuki was in attendance with his fiancee. An argument ensued when Suzuki became concerned that Kudo began to show too much attention to his fiancée. When the couple walked out of the party, a fight ensued when Kudo and Stanley Harai attacked Suzuki. Suzuki was stabbed in the neck and died. A knife was later found at the scene of the crime. Kudo and Harai were arrested on June the 22nd, 1964. A preliminary hearing was held, and arraignment was set for July the 13th. After Kudo was booked and fingerprinted, his fingerprints were sent to the FBI's Identification Division in Washington, and it was discovered that KUDO was wanted in Honolulu for rape. I am unsure if this crime was ever adjudicated, but on September the 22nd, 1967, Judge Masato Doi denied a motion by KUDO requesting that the charge of rape be dismissed because he had been denied a speedy trial. The judge answered the request by stating, although he claims a violation of his Sixth Amendment rights to a speedy trial, he is not a seeker of, but a fugitive from, justice. The judge also added, a defendant must be within the jurisdiction and available for trial, not a fugitive yelling from beyond the process of this court. I could not find any further information on this matter. In regard to the murder charges KUDO was facing for the stabbing death of Suzuki, he was lucky and was only convicted of manslaughter. KUDO was received at San Quentin on November the 17th, 1964. This is where he became acquainted with the Mexican mafia and sponsored into the clica by Daniel Chapo Chapa from Hawaiian Gardens, who had the additional alias of Hapo. What an interesting quirk of fate that a Japanese American from Hawaii connected with a Mexican gang member from Hawaiian Gardens known as Hapo or JAP and was sponsored into a predominantly Mexican American gang. KUDO was also made an honorary member of Barrio Hawaiian Gardens, similar to how Frankie Chivobuena Merced was made an honorary member of Primera Flats prior to his induction into the Mexican Mafia. But before we continue, let us take a minute to discuss Chapo Chapa's commitment offense because at first glance from the picture you are viewing, he doesn't appear to be too dangerous or menacing, but his crime may say otherwise. On Saturday, April the 14th, 1962, a rumble took place between two longtime feuding gangs, the Hawaiian Gardens Demonios clique and the Artesia Espantos clique. Apparently, Daniel Chapo Chapa, who belonged to the Demonios, was not happy with the outcome and decided to go hunting on his own for some revenge in the Artesia Espantos territory. At a pre-trial hearing, two Espantos gang members, Junio Boros and Richard Arrod, testified providing the details of the attack. They said the attack was unhurried and there was no running by either Chapo or his victims. They estimated that at least 10 minutes elapsed between the first shot fired and the last. Chapo was reported to have pulled up to a residence on 18817 Albertus Avenue in Artesia and exited his vehicle and began his assault. Robert Sanchez, aged 19, was first to be shot. He suffered gunshots to the chest, abdomen, and right thigh. He bled out and died from a bullet wound to the heart. The next to be shot was Refugio Rivera Jr., age 17. He was shot in the right hand and back. Chapo was reported to then have walked towards a restaurant a block away near the South Street intersection and just stood around. The two Espantos witnesses testified that when Chapo began his assault on Robert Sanchez, they exited a vehicle they were sitting in on Albertus Avenue and ran up a driveway to escape the gunfire. When they returned about 10 minutes later, they heard Sanchez yelling for help and observed Tomas Rodriguez, age 16, walk towards the slowly retreating Chapo. The witness said he saw Chapo then turn around and shoot once and hit Rodriguez in the hip. Chapo then walked onto South Street and turned toward Pioneer Boulevard. The two Espantos witnesses then said they went to a nearby field where they had hidden a rifle. They then jumped into a vehicle driven by a third Espantos gang member, only identified as Romero, and went looking for Chapo. Near South Street and Pioneer, they found Chapo walking slowly northward. They quickly made a U-turn and fired once at Chapo and then sped off. Chapo was later taken to the Artesia hospital by his parents for treatment of a bullet wound in the lower back. There he was arrested by police for murder and assault with the intent to commit murder as a result of the shootout and the resulting casualties. On June 15, 1962, Chapo entered into a not guilty plea by reason of insanity to the charges of murder and assault with the intent to commit murder. Judge Marie C. Sparling appointed Dr. George Abe to examine Chapo. A trial date was set for July the 23rd, 1962, and he was to be held without bail until then. Having been found sane, Chapo agreed to plead guilty to one count of second-degree murder. He applied for probation but was denied and sentenced to 5 years to life in the California Department of Corrections. This is where Chapo was recruited into the Mexican Mafia. Unfortunately, I didn't come across much in regard to KUDO's time behind the walls, but I did discover this picture, which I thought was too good not to share. It also brought up some stories that I had heard about KUDO, the veracity of which I can't be sure of, but I want to share anyways. Some have said that it was KUDO that had introduced the Eastern warrior philosophy to the fellas, such as the 7 principles that the samurai lived by, known as Bushido, and the writings of Miyamoto Musashi. As you can see from the picture, KUDO was a practitioner of the martial arts, which is no surprise because I found articles reporting on his father, Isami KUDO, participating in various boxing matches. I was also told that at one point, KUDO had a martial arts studio in Honolulu when he paroled back to Hawaii. Speaking of which, after serving 7 years on the manslaughter beef, KUDO was paroled back to Hawaii in 1972. In preparation for his parole, he was transferred to Chino South CC. Here he is pictured with fellow Hawaiian Gardens homeboy and founding father of the Mexican Mafia, Luis Huero Buff Flores. Buff was also getting ready to parole, and once he did, he hooked up with fellow homeboy Alex Hondo Lechuga, who had escaped from Soledad on May the 30th, 1969, and fled to Juarez, Mexico. They set up the first Mexican Mafia heroin pipeline from Mexico to Los Angeles. The other Mexican Mafia member pictured far right is Raul Dopey Montes from 38th Street. The identity of the other individual is unknown to me. On June 8, 1973, the Honolulu Advertiser reported that the Oahu grand jury indicted KUDO, now 32 years old, for the alleged possession on May 3, 1973, of a shotgun and ammunition by a person convicted of a felony. On July the 27th, 1973, Circuit Judge Alan R. Hawkins signed extradition papers for KUDO, ordering his return to California for violating his parole. The newspaper reported that he was managing a billiard parlor at the time of his arrest. After a short stint behind the walls for the parole violation, KUDO returned to Honolulu once again. Over time, various Mexican Mafia members, with the assistance of KUDO, who knew the lay of the land, engaged in running heroin and crystal meth from the mainland to Hawaii. It was even reported that they engaged in an extortion scheme against union workers that worked on the set of the popular show Baywatch. Some of the members involved in these activities included Paul Huero Tres Portillo from Hazard Grande, Antonio Tony Palacios from Garrity, and William Roland Rolo Berry from Watts. At some point, KUDO left his beloved Honolulu and moved to Evergreen, Alabama, where he died on July the 15th, 1993, at the young age of 53. I am not sure of the circumstances of his death, but I'm sure he regretted spending those years locked up when he realized his life would be cut short. Be careful out there. Good night and God bless.